I'm going to talk to you today about how to grow tiny superhumans. Now, I have two kids, 6-year-old twin boys. You may have seen them running around back here or running between your legs, dodging through you. Their names are River and Taryn, and this is a photo of them after they did a triathlon in Thailand last December, and they love to do triathlons. They also, of course, do Spartan races. They did the Spartan the other day, and they cook pad thai and play the piano and program Lego robots and dance a lot better than their dad does already. And the cool thing is, we live in this amazing era where you have the ability to enable the children in your life to look, feel, and perform like optimized human machines. And if you don't like kids, you don't know kids, you don't have kids, the cool thing is the same things that make your kids superhuman make you superhuman too. So we're going to jump right into some of the things that you can do, some of the practical things you can do with children to grow them into tiny superhumans. How many of you in here ate your own boogers when you were a kid? Okay, so we may have been onto something. A kid's snot actually harbors bacteria that, when consumed, strengthens their own immune system. So our kids will kiss our dogs on the lips, and I've seen them lick the floor of public coffee shops. And on the way down here, Taryn ate his rice cake off of the floor of the airport. And, I don't really care because it's exposure to dirt and germs and bacteria and even parasites that allows a child's immune system to grow stronger. And it's really not a coincidence that in our era of antibiotics and antibacterial hand soap and bottle boiling, and even daily bathing, our kids take a bath about once every 3 days. It's no coincidence that in this hyper-clean era, we're experiencing unparalleled issues with autoimmune-related diseases like obesity, leaky gut, ADD, autism. See, if you don't let your kids get dirty, their immune systems don't get stronger. Now, my wife loves it when I talk about her birth canal when I'm up on stage, but our kids were born via C-sections. They didn't pass through mom's birth canal and pick up all that good bacteria they're supposed to get when they were born. So we not only made sure to breastfeed them, but if your children are already older, or if you have children in your life who are already older and they were fed, say, soy formula and they weren't breastfed, you can do things like give them colostrum to help to seal up the gut lining. Our kids also get lots of dirty foods like kimchi and kombucha and sauerkraut and yogurt. All of that is dirt and germs and bacteria, and it's awesome for you and for your kids. So while they're eating these strange foods, the next thing that you can do is let them eat fat. This is a picture of River spreading his bone marrow over some sourdough bread that Mom made. And bone marrow is actually chock full of healthy fats and fat-soluble vitamins that not only help a child's brain and nervous system to grow stronger, but these fat-soluble vitamins are responsible for things like facial symmetry and beauty, which are actually directly responsible in our day and age for some of a child's success later in life. But vitamin K2, for example, is a very powerful fat-soluble vitamin. It's responsible for keeping growth plates from calcifying in children, which can stunt their growth, but it's rarely found in the type of foods that kids are eating these days. It's mostly found in animal-based fats, unless you want to feed your children natto, which is a fermented Japanese soybean. But we feed our kids plenty of sardines, bone broth, wild-caught fish, grass-fed butter, lots of healthy fats. Now, the type of fats that the type of foods that we don't give them would be like low-fat yogurt, fat-free cereal, fat-free granola, a lot of these fad, healthy foods, because they don't have the fats that a child needs for their growing brain. So we give them lots of brain foods, fats. Another example is walnuts. And this is kind of cool how nature gives us little clues like this. But walnuts are shaped like a little brain, and they're actually good for your brains. Guys, avocados are actually good for your testicles. Celery is good for erection. So it's funny how nature gives us all sorts of clues like this. I bet you didn't know you were going to walk out of here with some new things to get in the produce aisle. Our kids have a big handful of raw walnuts every morning. So we love to give them these brain foods. And it's interesting because high intake of fat has also been shown to be correlated with things like decreased aggression and ADD in children. And so this is another important reason that you should give them fats. Now, you want a little bit of aggression in your child's life, and so that's the next thing I want to tell you about. You let your kids fight. This is the kids taking some kickboxing lessons on an island down in Thailand, and they They kind of fight like me. They go straight for the vital organs. We have this game that we play up on stage. Guys, don't rush up here because we're not going to play this game right now. But I get into this position. It's called takedown, and they just run at me and try and take me down. And this game's going to backfire on me someday, probably about a year from now, once they're big enough to actually take me down. We have another one where I just get down on the ground like this, and they pile on top of me, and then I try and get up and throw them off. And you know, roughhousing, I know, seriously. Some of you have seen my knees. They're super messed up. Roughhousing is so important for your children. It teaches them how to deal with unpredictable situations. It teaches them how to deal with pain and discomfort and losing, especially if you don't always let them win, which you shouldn't necessarily do. And it increases levels of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, interesting hormone that's also incidentally increased when they're doing things like standing. And that helps a child's neurons to grow. So roughhousing with your kids, wrestling with children, fighting with children, actually makes them smarter. And you might think that it would make them more violent, but it's just not so. Research has shown that kids who roughhouse are more socially and emotionally mature. The amount of roughhousing that a child does when they're young is a better predictor of their achievement in first grade than their kindergarten test scores are. So it's very, very interesting. And there are all sorts of ways that you can roughhouse and fight with your child. It teaches them the difference between play and aggression, between kindness and hostility. It teaches them how to deal with rules of morality. And it gets them physically active, which I don't have to tell you is a huge missing component of kids' lives these days. And this leads, I'm so glad that talk came before me because it makes my job super easy. This is a poster that hangs on the wall of my office. It's got 50 different positions that you could be in during the day. It's like the Kama Sutra of standing workstations, kind of. And, you know, you've of course seen the evidence just from this talk that came before me that sitting is the new smoking, and it doesn't matter how much Spartan training or how many CrossFit workouts or whatever it is that you're doing at the end of the day that you do, if you have your butt planted in a chair for 8 hours a day or even for more than 2 hours at any given time. And they've done the same type of research in children. One of the interesting things that they've found is that regardless of the amount of time that a child spends sitting versus standing, it's breaks in sedentary time, aka recess. A child getting up, sitting down, you know, maybe even having access to these standing desks where they can move into different positions. That is one of the biggest influencers on decreasing a child's risk for everything. Blood pressure, blood sugar, bad cholesterol, obesity, everything. So let your child stand. And you can look into these type of desks. What's the name of the website? The gal that just spoke, was it Just Stand? JustStand.org. And there are companies you're probably aware of, like Veridesk and Updesk and Focal Upright and Rebel Desk. All of these companies make these standing workstations for home that you can easily put into your home, even if your child is sitting at school. You can at least get them standing at home, in their bedrooms, when they're doing homework, etc. Now, when they're standing, the next important thing is to let their feet free. And you no doubt saw my kids running around barefoot, and you know, I actually don't even like to wear shoes. As a matter of fact, I'm going to practice what I preach and ditch the whole fashion thing. So, you know, my kids go around barefoot just like me, and just like Dad, they have these tough, calloused, really ugly, but resilient feet. And this is very important because the way that a child's foot is loaded early in life affects their ankles, their knees, their hips, their pelvis, even the space in their chest that their lungs are in for the rest of their life. So when you put a child in overprotected, built-up, stabilizing, fashionable footwear, their tiny foot muscles atrophy and their foot bones degrade. Now, in an adult, this can take years to change and is responsible for some of the lawsuits that Vibram Five Fingers is getting right now. In a child, it can take as little as 3 months to reinvent a child's foot and to begin to form those foot bones and muscles properly. You can get your child into barefoot type of shoes, minimalist shoes like Vivo Barefoot or Merrell or Bobucks or Vibram. A lot of these companies are making minimalist shoes for children now. If you have an older child, like an adolescent, and their feet need to be reinvented, they make socks with toe spreaders, like Happy Feet socks, that your child can sleep in to reinvent their foot while they're asleep, and then get them out on uneven surfaces like sand and gravel and dirt in their bare feet or in minimalist shoes so that their foot bones start to reinvent. So it's very, very important that you expose your child's foot to lots of different surfaces. So you've got your child now barefoot, dirty, drinking kombucha on the front lawn. And the next thing is they just need to kick them out the door and let them play. This is a photo, actually, that appeared in the journal Atlantic a couple of years ago in a really great article. The article was called The Overprotected Kid. And if you look at this playground, there's no fancy metal slide, with the little tic-tac-toe board. There's no seesaw with the delicate yellow balance in the middle. There's no rubber bucket swings for the babies. There's just like some old tires and some pieces of wood. See, this lack of unstructured free play has stripped our children of things like independence and risk-taking and discovery. A kid who doesn't have a chance to solve their own problems, to make their own decisions, to follow their own internal moral compass, they wind up feeling less in control of their own decisions, less in control of their own fate. I grew up on 6 acres of land. I was homeschooled, so my parents would just kick me out the door around 11 o'clock or noon, and I would disappear for the day. And somehow I'd make it back home in time for dinner, having learned a lot about myself and the world around me. Our kids are the same way. They're growing up on 10 acres of land, and we just kick them out the door. And it's hard sometimes to just let them go, and we do make sure that there's no major hazards like bear traps or mountain lions in the vicinity, but we understand that there's a difference between placing your child in a protected bubble and just being smart about major hazards. See, growing a tiny superhuman isn't about creating a perfect kid. It's about creating a free-thinking, free-spirited, resilient child who knows how to thrive in unpredictable situations. So just let them go. Now, how many of you in here exercise? Okay, so this is really interesting. They did this study at University of Essex about 2 years ago, and it was a bleep test. I don't know if you have seen a bleep test before or done a bleep test, but you've got a line of cones, and about 25 yards away, you've got another line of cones. This loud bleep sounds, and all the kids run to one set of cones, and then a bleep sounds again, and they run back to the next set of cones, and the bleeps continue in these increasingly short intervals as the kids run back and forth. It's a really horrible, horrible test. It's painful. I had to do it in college. Interestingly, what they found was that one of the best predictors of a child's success on this test was how fit and physically active that child perceived their parents to be. So the more fit and physically active you are, the more fit and physically active your child will be. And for this reason, we go out of our way to include our kids in our workouts as much as possible. So we swim with our kids on our backs and on our sides with kickboards. We'll do push-ups with our kids on our back. We do bear crawls up the hills and sprints up the hills holding our kids. I'm practicing, I probably couldn't show you now, but I'm practicing Turkish get-ups with my kids on my shoulders like sandbags. We include our kids in as many different workouts and exercise activities as possible. I once read a story in Triathlete magazine, and I'm hoping it wasn't a quote from Karen, because otherwise I will completely offend her now. But it was from a parent. They said they wanted to be the invisible exerciser, right? They wanted to have all their workouts done before their kids got out of bed in the morning or after their family went to bed at night. And we're the complete opposite. We want our kids to see us exercising and join in. And I would encourage you as well to make sure that you don't see your children as an annoyance or an impedance to your workouts, but try and include them. Get creative. Put those little kettlebells and mini dumbbells and all those type of things in the gym and get them active. So there's a couple more things that you can do for your kids. In our house, we have the same routine. Day after day, week after week, month after month, we go upstairs to go to bed, and I read them a story, I play them a song on the guitar, we all go around the room and we say one thing that we're grateful for, and then we just go to sleep. And there are no bright lights, there's no iPhones, no iPads, no television, none of these huge melatonin disruptors that exist in so many children's lives, especially at night these days. And sleep is so important for a child. It's when their nervous system heals. It's when memories form. It's when learning is cemented. And so when a child's sleep suffers, their memory suffers, their learning suffers, their attention span suffers, their ability to be complete human beings the next day disappears to an even greater extent than how that occurs in adults. And sadly, kids sleep an average of an hour less these days than they did 30 years ago. So we follow this concept of free sleep in our household. You know, this morning is a perfect example. I went hiking up the hill, and I gave my kids the option to join me. Okay, and they wanted to sleep, so they slept an extra half hour or hour or so. And our children sleep when they're tired, they nap when they're tired, they wake when they're refreshed, and we are not a tiger mom and a tiger dad. We don't pull our kids out of bed in the morning to go practice break dancing or play the piano.
because we understand that the cons of that, for children especially, growing children, outweighs the pros. And in an era of disruptive alarm clocks and heavy homework at night, I think that we're actually doing our children a disservice. So let your children sleep. And this brings me to the last thing I want to talk to you about, and that's to let them relax. How many of you have been lying next to your spouse or your significant other at night, and it just feels like something isn't right? Like you can sense that something's not right. I know my wife's looking at me, like especially if you turn over and you can see that their eyes are open and they're like looking at the wall, then you know something's really wrong. But you can sense that sometimes without even looking at them. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you've had hot, crazy, wild sex, and it just feels like your bodies for the rest of the night are just somehow connected, like your souls are connected. Well, there's something to that. Your heart actually emits this electromagnetic signal that's 60 times greater than that of your brain. And your brain and your heart are connected via something that existed when you were in your embryonic stages. It's called the vagus nerve. And so when you're stressed, when your mood is off, that affects your heart and your heart signal. And your heart and your heart signal not only affects you, but because that field is so powerful, it affects people within 8 to 10 feet around you. So it's really crazy. Like Keno's heart is affecting Jess's brain, is affecting John's mood, is affecting my stress levels. It's really crazy. It's like that movie Avatar, where we're all kind of sort of interconnected by these invisible electrical fields. So when you're at work, running away from the lion that's jumping out from the email inbox in your computer while you're cradling the phone to your neck and making dinner all at the same time, even if you do a really good job internalizing that stress, your family feels it. Your children feels it. It affects not just you, but it also affects them on a physiological level. So when I'm stressed out at home, because I do work from home and my children are around me when I'm working, if I find that I'm stressed out and I'm shallow chest breathing and my heart's racing, I take just a second and I use a really powerful technique to bring my heart's rhythm back into alignment. And this is something that you can learn. And if it's okay with you, I want to end today by teaching you this technique so that you can affect not only your own stress levels, but the children around you. So if you would do this with me, go ahead and close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, begin to breathe. And don't judge yourself. It doesn't matter how you breathe, through your nose or through your mouth. But what I want you to think about as you breathe is begin to focus on your heart, that area in the center of your chest. Now, if you're teaching this to kids, help them put their hand over their heart. It's important for a kid to know where their heart, where that center of their soul is. So as you breathe, begin to direct that breath into your heart. Feel that breath go in and out of that area around your heart. And now we're going to get to the really powerful part. I want you to imagine a positive emotion. And let's get even more specific. Imagine that child in your life, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your grandson, your granddaughter. Imagine their face, their smile, their smooth skin, their soft hair against your cheeks as you snuggle them. Feel that positive emotion wash over you. Breathe it into your heart. Breathe it right there into the center of your chest. Let that positive emotion wash over you. Feel your body change. Feel your mood change. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Now, what you just did, you can learn to do within 10 seconds. And if there's one thing that you take from my talk today, and one thing that I wish I'd have known when I was 15 years old, if there's one thing from eating fat to getting dirty to fighting to standing to letting your feet free to exercising to sleeping more, take this one thing back to one child in your life and teach it to them. And they will become superhuman. And so will you. Thanks.